Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the show that puts you, the listener, in the driver's seat because you are the content. The phone lines are open to be a part of the program. It's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Give me a call. We'll have a conversation about your tech questions or business and tech questions. Linux advocate, above all else, small business owner, and now host of the only radio show centered around you, the listener. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. So good evening to you all. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show. I am your host, Noah Chalaya. Happy to be here with you tonight, and we've got a heck of a show lined up for you this evening. If you are joining us over the FM frequency, you are the only ones listening to us at the moment because our stream is not working at the moment, and I am I am just working through some of those technical difficulties, and of course doing that while I'm trying to host the show as well. So hopefully you guys on the on KEQQ Logos Radio, you will be patient with us just for a second while we get our internet stream up and going. But I promise you it will be worth it because we do have a exciting show coming right up. So a huge thank you to those of you who emailed in this week, those of you who made Reddit posts, etc. regarding the show and our request to improve the show, as mentioned last week. And I'm still taking those requests if it's something you guys have time to do. But basically, if you have an extra moment and you have a suggestion of how we can improve the show, go ahead and let us know. You can send those to live@asknoahshow.com, or even better yet, use the contact form on our Ask Noah dashboard. That's asknoahshow.com, the canonical place for all of your resources. We're going to get to some of your emails, and in fact, to that end, let's just jump right in. Dave writes in, and he says, "Hi, I have one question." That's what they all say, right? "I've always heard that routers have their own built-in firewalls, but on various podcasts I listen to, people often bring up things like pfSense and other firewall setups. Now, I know I could Google this, but it might be a topic worth discussing on your show. Right now, I have a home and work network behind routers, but I am not sure if I'm taking a big risk by not having a separate firewall in place. Thanks again, Dave P." Well, Dave, the answer to your question is that yes, most routers, modern routers, do in fact include firewalls. A firewall is also an appliance that you can buy separate and add into your system. That's you can go either way, but the advantage of a external firewall, the advantage of what we call typically an edge device, because it sits at the edge of your network, the advantage in having a separate edge device is that oftentimes they are a little bit more flexible. They're a little bit more configurable than what you would have just with an ordinary household router. So, for example, a very typical router is the WAP54G or WRT54G, whatever the exact model is from Linksys. And the downside to that particular router is, or the upside is that it does have a firewall. The downside is you can't do some of the more advanced firewall filtering like you can with, let's say, a Microtech RB750. Now, that's a commercial grade router. It's one that we use a lot in production. The advantage of the Microtechs are that they are $35, and you can order them off of Amazon, have them primed to your house, and it runs an operating system called Router OS, which is an enterprise grade routing operating system. And again, these do have firewalls built in. The advantage of using the reason that I really like the Microtech as opposed to some of the other more expensive devices is that Microtech does scale. You can actually get a Microtech router that is, $10,000 and runs a network of many hundreds of thousands of users. But it is simple enough, and that you can actually get the same operating system running in your house. And I just got word that our internet stream is about to come back up. So if you are joining us and want to listen online, we should be live now at jblive.tv. So welcome, JB Live listeners, jblive.tv or jblive.fm. We're happy to have you guys here. Hopefully we've gotten all those issues worked out. and we were just talking about routers and firewalls, dedicated firewalls being a thing. If you don't have a reason to use a separate firewall, if you don't have a reason to use an external edge device, as we're going to call it, don't worry about it. As long as you have a firewall built into your router. Now, where you always want a firewall is you want a device that is actively blocking traffic, and more importantly, logging that traffic, those attempts to access your network, because without any firewall in place, if you didn't have any sort of port forwarding, NAT is going to, albeit unintentionally, provide some security to you, because if you're passing traffic to a public IP address and you're trying to protect a machine at a private IP address, there's nothing to really facilitate that NAT translation back into your machine without actually having specified some firewall rules. But security through obscurity is no real security at all. And so what you want is a device that is actively blocking those attempts, and more importantly, logging those attempts so that you know that there is, in fact, an issue. Thanks, Dave, for writing in. We really appreciate having you. Again, phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAA. It's 1-855-450-6624. We have another email that came in live here right on the show. This comes in from Chris K. Chris says, "Hi, Noah. I've been a Linux user for some time. I do all of my work in Linux, and I moved computers and servers I own to Linux. Except my wife's laptop. It wasn't a trust issue. It was a rationale fear of her university not accepting certain file formats and being incompatible. Enter last week. She's wrapping up her master's degree. She turns on her computer to continue her research, and no Windows, not now, she says. Clicking once more, she denies the update. An hour goes by. She leaves her computer for the ever slightest moment for a fresh drink, returning to see configuring updates. This may take some time. Do not shut off your computer. Now, I'm a compassionate man, so I lent her my Debian Stretch desktop to complete her work. The Windows updates continued into the night. Today, her laptop is happily running Kubuntu 1704, another convert, another Linux success story, and another Microsoft failure, i.e. Sigh. I am not able to listen today, but it seems like you love success stories involving Linux. Yes, I do. I told her that if she hit a wall and she was unavailable, she could reach out to the Ask Noah show for assistance. Thanks so much for what you do, Chris, Rikai, Wes, and Joe, too." And this comes in from Chris. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to actually extend you a special offer. If your wife has any issue, especially if she's getting through her master's degree, we at the Ask Noah show want to be a part of her every success. So, yeah, please give her that number, 1-855-450-NOAA, 855-450-6624. And if she has issues that need immediate attention as it relates to her master's degree, go ahead and have her give customer care a call. Altuspeed Technologies, 1-866-280-1433. That number again, 1-866-280-1433. And I'm going to go ahead and make a note with your name on it in our ticketing system. And if she calls in, we're going to go ahead and assign her a technician to help her for the first couple hours for free at no cost to you guys, because we definitely, like I said, want to be a part of her success in switching to Linux and completing her master's degree. Nobody wants to troubleshoot computers, and she may not have a week to wait till the show actually goes on the air. Now, my friend Steve Owens from Red Hat put out a ripping good read article this week on Ansible. Now, if you have no idea what Ansible is, or maybe you've heard the name, but it sounds like one of those, super complicated things that you have no use for, let me let you in on a little secret. Rather, let Steve let you in on a little secret with the 5-minute tour. Ansible is, let's see, it's a way to manage multiple workstations. It's kind of like Puppet or Chef. But what Steve does that I think is particularly great in this article that he wrote for opensource.com is he shows you how you can get started with Ansible with some very, very simple, straightforward examples. And I think that is something that often gets left out, especially when you look at things like Ansible. It is configurable enough and it's agile enough that you can use it for just about anything if you're willing to put the time in to learn how to write the YAML files. But how do you even get started? And so this is very, very straightforward, simple stuff. Things like, how do you update every server under your thumb with a single command? Like, that's something we can all use, and it's actually really simple to get it set up. It'd take you less than 5 minutes. In fact, you could do it while you're listening live here to the Ask Noah show. OpenSource.com headline: How to automate your system administration tasks with Ansible. Do you want to sharpen your Linux system administration skills? Perhaps you have some stuff running on your local LAN and you want to make it easier in your life. Where do you begin? In this article, I'll explain how to set up tooling and simplify administration with multiple machines. When it comes to remote administration tools like SaltStack, Puppet, Chef, and Ansible are a few popular options. Throughout this article, I'll focus on Ansible and explain how it can be helpful whether you have 5 virtual machines or 1,000. Our journey begins with basic administration of setting up multiple machines, whether they are virtual or physical. I will assume that you have an idea of what you want to achieve and some basic administration skills, or at least the ability to look up these steps will require to perform each task. I will show you how to use the tools, and it is up to you to decide what to do with them. What is Ansible? Ansible, the website explains, is a project for a radically simple IT automation engine that automates cloud provisioning, configuration, and management. Ansible can be used to perform the same tasks across a defined set of servers from a centralized location. If you're familiar with Bash for loops, then you'll find that Ansible operates in a very similar fashion. The difference, however, is that Ansible is in layman's terms, generally Ansible only performs the requested action if a change will occur. As a result, for example, if you were to perform bash for loop to create a user across all of your machines, it may look like something like this. And then he gives an example of how you would create a user add for loop inside of bash. This would create my user on server A, server B, and server C. However, it would run the user add command every time the for loop was run, whether or not the user existed. With Ansible, it will first check whether the user exists. If it does not, then a tool will create it. This is a simplified example, of course, but the benefits of this tool will become more clear over time. Ansible translates Ansible playbook into commands that are run over SSH, which has several benefits when managing a Unix-like environment. First, most Unix-like environments you are administrating will already have SSH running by default. Relying on SSH means that no agent is required to run the remote host. I want to stop right there. That has been my major turnoff to most software stacks. Anytime I have to set up and run a particular service and I have to install the agents on all these machines, that means that if I ever decide to switch using that agent, I have to go uninstall all of the, every one of those computers that I've touched. Or I also risk, because I've changed some configuration or something like that, I risk that machine not working in the future. So that's concern number one. I'll continue on here. Most distributions of Linux have this version or greater installed by default. That is Python 2.6. Although running Ansible in a cron job is possible, by default, Ansible only runs when you tell it to. So then he walks through his first tutorial, or his first example is how to set up SSH key generation. And we'll have a link in the show notes, so if you want to go follow, he walks you step by step exactly what to do. I'm going to assume that a lot of you know how to generate SSH keys. And like I said, if you don't, we'll have a link for you in the show notes. He says Ansible does not require root access. However, if you choose to run a non-root user, you must configure the appropriate sudo permissions for the task you wish to accomplish. You'll be prompted for the root password for your servers, which will allow your SSH key to be installed on the remote host. Okay, so that's still, he's going over how to generate the SSH key. All right, the installation of the Ansible package only requires that the host generate an SSH key as seen in example 1. If you are running Fedora, you can issue the following command: sudo dnf install Ansible tac-y. If you run CentOS, you need to configure the extra packages for the Enterprise Linux EPEL repository. That's sudo yum install EPEL-release space tac-y. Then you can install Ansible with the command yum install Ansible tac-y. He also gives the PPA if you want to run this on Ubuntu. It runs on Ubuntu just fine. He gives a PPA that you can install and then the install command. And interestingly enough, he even gives you the the pip command if you want to install it on your silver sliver of trash known as a Macintosh or whatever they're calling it these days. Ansible uses the INI style, or the inventory style, to track when servers it may manage. By default, this file is located in /Ansible/hosts. In this article, I will use the Ansible inventory shown in example 2 to perform actions against the desired host, which has been paired. So basically he shows what the host file looks like and how you can add all of the hosts that you wish to manage. He shows you how to group them up so you can have different groups of servers. And basically, after you've done all this, what you can do is run Ansible tac A and then whatever command you want to run. So, for example, if you ran Ansible tac A yum updates tac Y, it's going to run the yum update tac Y command across all of your servers. So if you had 1,000 servers and you wanted to update them all at once, especially on one network, well, then you would have a denial of service. But if, let's just say you were running a local repo, then you could update all of those servers at one time. And he has all sorts of different things. He shows you how you can do pings and have the results of that, spit out into a file. I mean, all of these things, he really dives into this thing and shows you how you can set a lot of this stuff up. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but suffice to say that, this is a really cool system. And I've played with Ansible in the past, but I wouldn't say I'm an expert at Ansible, and I certainly do not do a lot of server management, I've used Chef more than Ansible for stuff like that. I want to jump to the phones here before I leave people hanging too long. James is calling from Idaho. Hi, James. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Do you know enough about Samba to get a guest account, set up a no password, because I'm running a alpha program on another unit that doesn't have authentication capabilities, according to the developer at this time, and I want to test their Samba client without destroying my Samba config.
Sure. Oh, you don't want to destroy the Samba config?
Not really.
Well, I tell you what. What if I did this? If I sent you a Samba basic Samba config that lets you authenticate without a password, would you be able to figure out which parts of your Samba config you wish to keep and just take the relevant portions? Or the other thing you could do is like, good.
I'm listening to the echo, so I'm not pretty sure which, how that works on the phone and the radio. So I'm like waiting for you to talk. Yeah, I can for a situation, but I wasn't sure exactly how to set it to the folder I want, which is the course use the default pub folder, and I figured that would work. But I wasn't 100% sure what I was doing. I haven't used Samba setups in so long, I've forgotten everything I've quickly taught in class.
Sure, yeah, no, that makes sense. Samba is one of those beasts, too, where it is remarkably simple to get up and running, and you can spend the rest of your life trying to tweak it to run exactly how you want. So I'll give you two options there. You tell me what would work better for you. Option one is I will give you a basic Samba config that has no authentication, just basically a guest, then full read and write access to the folder. The second thing I could do, if you're comfortable with it and there's no confidential information, or if you want to star that confidential information out, you could send in your Samba configuration file, and we could just make the necessary changes. What would work best for you?
Which one would take the least amount of your time for your end of it? I could pretty good figuring it out, because I can point me to the right file. If you have comments that say you need to look for this line, so you know at the right point, put this information in, and you should be good. Or if you want to actually look, because I'm running right now, I'm wanting to go back in there and go, no, it's not right.
Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let me do this. Why don't I have you send an email in? Head over to asknoahshow.com and send an email into us, and I'll reply with a example Samba config for with no authentication with the guest password. And then what I'll do is I will, if that doesn't work for you, what we'll do is we'll take you back and maybe I'll have you reply with your Samba file, and then we can tweak it. Can I ask what the alpha software you're using that you're testing with?
It was someone wrote an alpha software for an Android tablet. It was a Samba client, and he wrote he didn't have the authentication portion working, and I thought, oh, cool, let's play with that, because I'm always up for anything new. And and thought I'd give it a try, his little app a try. But I need to get to my Samba side set up so it can accept, basically guest and no authentication before I can try. And then that's where I was like, okay, I need to edit this file, and you know how that goes. Where you're like, okay, I've at this point over my.
Let me ask you this: so you're wanting to set the Samba share up simply to try a piece of software? Like it's one of those things that it's like, this isn't going to production or anything. You're just setting it up. You're like, I'm going to try this piece of software. I need a Samba share. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and then I thought if I just had a Samba share set up for one folder only, that would work great if I wanted to touch a different machine where I didn't want to have, it may or may not have authentication, and since it would be only one folder, and it's just me, myself, and no one else touching it, it should be relatively safe, that works.
Gotcha.
And then I could just say, fine.
Well, I'll tell you. Here's what I would do. Here's what I would do, James. What I would do if I were in that situation, I'll help you with the Samba config. We can get that set up. But if that's giving you a headache, what I would do if I wanted to get something spun up real fast and I just wanted it to work, particularly, opening any sort of no authentication up to my actual computer doesn't really appeal to me. So I'll tell you what I would do if I were in your shoes. You called me, asked me, my opinion, so and I'm an expert on it. What I would do is I'd spin up like either a libvirt and Virt Manager or something with VirtualBox, and I would just run a FreeNAS instance and create yourself a little public Samba folder and store it on there. And then you can spin that puppy up and spin it down when you're not using it. I'm not crazy about having a folder, even if it is, even if you put red letters in it and all that jazz and say this is the public folder and whatever. I don't know. It wouldn't be my favorite thing to do. So that may be what I'll do. But if you want, you head over to AskNoahShow.com, click on the contact link, and we'll definitely help you out. Eric writes in, Hey Noah, celebrating my son's first birthday tonight, so I can't join you. Well, happy birthday to your son, Eric. Wish him a happy birthday from us at the Ask Noah Show. As you know, I've been working at an IT consulting startup here in Kansas City, and my list of clients grows every day. One thing has become obvious. I'm going to need hardware. Using a Dell laptop as an example, what's the best way to get a good price? At some point, I do have to become a Dell reseller. Amazon, buy plenty of units during a sale, and then charge a couple of % to the client to make money back on the transaction. Thanks for all you're doing. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. First of all, where do you buy cheap hardware? Well, the truth, Eric, is that the profit margins on laptops are next to nothing. When you buy a laptop at Best Buy, buddy, you are getting a deal. They sell those things. Have you ever noticed this? When you walk into Best Buy, they will sell you an extended warranty on a pencil. And you know why? Because that's where they make all their money. They make all their money off of financing and extended warranties. They don't make any of their money off the electronics that they sell. So it's actually a good buy. I mean, you are getting those things darn close to cost. And the thing is, Best Buy Corporation is buying hundreds of thousands of them, and your purchasing power is, 10 at a time, 5 at a time, something like that. So all that to say is, if you want the best deal, is shop the big store. Amazon's not a bad place either. Amazon, they sell those things darn near at cost, or sometimes I even suspect they sell them below cost. They're so cheap. That's not a bad place to buy them. Now, here's the part of your email that concerns me. You say, you need to become a Dell reseller. Well, you don't need to be, but you could. And as far as how many do you need to sell, Dell's partner program does not require you to, you could sell one computer a year and be a Dell. You could sell 0 computers a year. As far as I know, there's no minimum sales requirement for the Dell partner program. So I would sign up for that. And they'll give you a discount. It's not going to be huge. You might still find that you get better pricing off of Best Buy and Amazon. Again, purchasing power. But here's the part of your email that concerns me. You said that, wait on Amazon until you find a sale and then buy a bunch of them. Don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, the value in computers drop like a rock. I mean, we talk about the value of cars going downhill. I mean, it's a race to the bottom with computers. You can buy a $2,000 laptop, and before you get it into your trunk, it's already dropped 50% in value. So the problem is they got new machines coming out every 5 minutes. There's new features coming out every 5 minutes. And so if you sit on stock for even 6 to 8 months, you're out of date and you're going to have a hard time moving those machines. So I would not hold a stock in machines. We at Altispeed, we sell a lot of computers. I don't stock any of them. And I've had a couple people ask, and they said, could you keep a couple on cold shelf so in case we need to buy them? No, I can't. It's going to be 3 to 5 business days for us to get those in. And that's just the way we do business. The other thing, but anyway, so I would not stock machines. I would sell them. And the chat room's telling me, Intel is staging, their processors. That's true. But even, let's go back to Dell, for example. At the same time that we were quoting 3020 Optiplexes out, the 3040, I think that was replaced them, were already available on the website. And that's before this is like within like 5 days of we quoted out a machine and they were buying a machine, the next model came out literally in that week. Now, granted, that's not going to happen every week, but they move quickly. Manufacturers do. And even small things, even if you don't necessarily get a new chipset, especially right now with USB-C becoming a thing, more and more manufacturers are including those in their computers. I'm not a huge proponent of stocking up on any hardware really, but especially laptops. And one thing that we've done, and I'm not embarrassed to admit this, at Altispeed, we used to have a pretty decent stock of other things like access points, routers, stuff like that. A lot of that has been pared down. The things that are urgent, and interestingly enough, access points and routers would both be considered urgent. We still stock those. But for the most part, most of our stock, I use this service that is $100 and some a year, and there's a warehouse that has every IT part known to man, and they stock it for me, and then they ship it to me with free 2-day shipping. It's called Amazon Prime. So that's actually what we've done at Altispeed. There's a lot of the things that we sell, the day-to-day stuff, we just prime it, and then we mark it up 30%, and we sell it. In fact, if you order something off of our site, a lot of times that stuff is stocked by Amazon, and we just facilitate it. Now you're getting something for the markup, right? Because you're getting our name behind it. So you buy the Linux podcast setup, I think is like $250. Now you might be able to save yourself a couple dollars, and you order that thing on Amazon. But when you got trouble hooking that puppy up, then you're going to have to call us and pay $75 an hour. Now if you buy the system from us and you call and say, hey, I ordered the system, I'm having an issue with it, you call customer care, 866-280-1433, and they're going to help you with that. And the same is true, of course, with computers. Had a clinic just a couple weeks ago, bought a couple machines for us, and we spent the day out there showing them how to get them set up and how to get them hooked up. And as it turned out, one of the displays were damaged, and so we took care of the RMA process and all that stuff. So you're getting something for your money. But that's what I would do. I would not stock machines, and I take them straight from the internet. Again, phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. Or live at AskNoahShow.com. Got another email. This is popular, these live emails. Email comes in. This is from Adrian. Adrian says, hi, Noah, and thanks for all the great content you provide. I have a question about the lack of Linux being used in schools. I should point out I'm writing in the UK, so this may be different in the US. Recently, a family friend approached me asking to install Windows on their laptop. Because the laptop is relatively old, I installed Ubuntu. Since I cannot run Windows 10, this means I'm going to have to find an old copy. Let's see. This means I'm going to have to find an old copy of Windows 7 or 8 to install on it, despite the fact it will not run well. I'm confused. Adrian, why did we install Ubuntu and then go back to look for Windows 7 or 8? Installing Windows on it is not what bothers me, though. What bothers me is that the reason they gave for wanting to do so, they said the school needed Windows because because the software is used in their school. This is perhaps understandable and not something that can easily be changed. What can we do to encourage the use of Linux in schools? Well, Adrian, here's the thing. First off, I think that you're going to see a lot of schools are naturally gravitating towards Linux on laptops, and not necessarily because they have had some sort of epiphany, but because Google is actually heavily subsidizing it. So Google Apps or G Suite, they offer that completely for free for schools, and they actually have a highly discounted rate of their already subsidized hardware if they want to put Chromebooks in schools. So my son, for example, has a Chromebook. at his school, and that's only going to become more prolific. And the brilliant strategy at Google, really it is, brilliant marketing strategy on their part, is once those students graduate and they go into the workforce and their boss says, okay, well, we're going to need you to do X, Y, Z, and they're going to say, well, you know what? I actually know how to do all of those things, but I know how to do it in GDocs. Oh, okay, well, how much is that going to cost us? Well, as it turns out, I can create a Gmail for free, and I can use it for absolutely free. Okay, well, we want to do some more advanced things, like we want unlimited storage and all, some other email and stuff like calendaring, all that other stuff. Oh, okay, well, it turns out for $5 per user per month, they actually have a business suite, and you can actually do that. So that's a real interesting approach on Google's end. And the great thing is, of course, it's natively compatible in Linux because it just runs inside of a web browser. Now, the nice thing, as far as things that you can do to encourage the use of Linux in schools, one of the things that I am actually working on getting up and running here in Grand Forks, North Dakota is, let me see if I got the website here. I do. Give me 1 second. I feel so unprepared. But it was a live email, so what am I to do? But there is a program, and basically what this program does is it's an entire curriculum for kids to get involved in computing, and you basically take it to the school system and you say, here, I have this curriculum and I'd like to teach it to these kids. It's designed with the use of Raspberry Pis in mind, so you can basically buy 5 or 10 quote-unquote workstations and put them together. Now, here it is. It is called codeclubworld.org. And it's a volunteer code club for children aged 9 to 13. And one of the things that I thought about doing this a year ago or so for my son, and the problem I ran into is I was going to use Raspberry Pis. Now, the Pis are cheap. They're $35. The problem is the displays are like $100 and some. So, I mean, it's... you're looking, by the time you're done with a display and the Pi and the mouse and the monitor and the power supply, I mean, I'm looking at a significant capital investment. And I know the way I was as a kid, I always like free things, so I can't help being a person in tech. I have to give the computers to the kids when I'm done. Can't really afford to do that if I'm spending $200-300 per machine. But the Pinebook has come out, which is an ARM-based laptop that's selling for, I think the 11-inch version sells for like $85 or something like that. Now, that is something that I can afford to, buy 5 or 10 of these things and hold this code club after school and just tell the kids, if you attend all, 16 weeks or however long the thing is, then we just give you the machine when you leave. What kid isn't going to stick around for that? And they're learning something too. So I think ways like that are ways that you can get involved. And of course, if you wanted to get involved and you didn't have the capital to provide machines, you could always ask the school if, you could live boot 5 or 10 machines or something like that, or bring in 5 or 10 USB sticks, boot them off of that. That should work too. Adam is calling from Texas. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hello, Noah. Well, it's a tremendous honor to speak with you.
You too, sir. How can we help?
I just got to say that. Hey, I just want to say that you and Chris and the crew over there at JB have converted me to Linux. I've been successfully running some Fedora machines, Ubuntu machines. You guys have almost completely weaned me from Windows. But I want to run Trimble SketchUp, and it's not available for Linux. So what I'm trying to do is set up a VM of some kind on my Fedora 25 host that will run Windows 8.1 and then allow me to run SketchUp there. And so what I've done is I've tried just putting Windows 8.1 on GNOME boxes, which, it came up and ran, but it was super sluggish. It was barely usable at all. I've also tried Wine, which came up as Play on Linux, which fiddled with that for a weekend or so. Couldn't get too far with that. I couldn't even actually get SketchUp to run at all. I tried VMware Workstation, which gave me some problems around devel packages and things. I scoured the forums and tried a few things there, but couldn't get VMware to run either. And so now I'm with Virt Manager, and I can get Windows 8.1 to run, but it's just I can tell that the mouse is very sluggish. It doesn't seem to be very responsive, and it doesn't allow hardware virtualization, hardware acceleration for the graphics card. So SketchUp won't run at all there. So I'm just wondering if you could offer any suggestions as far as settings I could run in Virt Manager or other, tweaks I can try to get this running a little bit more stably?
Sure.
The other thing is that my hardware is really, I'm running an AMD quad-core E2 laptop here, and I'm just kind of worried maybe my hardware is not actually up to the job in the end.
Yeah, so the laptop hardware concern, that could definitely be a thing, and that's definitely something, it's either it works or it doesn't, right? Now, there's a couple things that come into mind in the way that you could crack this nut. The first way is something called GPU pass-through, which basically takes the graphical unit of your computer and passes it directly through to a guest. Now, on a laptop, I've had some interesting issues with this because what's happened a couple of times when I try to do GPU pass-through on a laptop is it captures the entire display device and I have no way left to control the computer. So I'm stuck inside of that VM. So that's one concern. With the NVIDIA stuff, the later NVIDIA stuff, it actually offers you the ability to run both you can choose, I want to run the Intel or the NVIDIA, so you could turn the NVIDIA off, pass that through to the guest. If I was in your shoes, what I would try doing, when you use Virt Manager, by default, the way that it controls the screen is it scrapes, it's what we call screen scraper. It basically takes a picture of the screen, then passes it through. It's using VNC to do that. And VNC, well, remarkable technology for 1995, is not really that performant. And so what I would try doing is utilizing something called RDP, which is Microsoft's remote desktop protocol. And what RDP will do is it will allow you to connect. You can run the virtual machine in Virt Manager, and then you could use RDP in a software like Remina, REMMINA. It's an RDP viewer. And I have seen, when I use an RDP client, I feel like I am on native metal. And I have played with Remina, obviously Microsoft's native RDP client, the N Computing L300. All of those utilize RDP, and it works very, very well. Now, obviously, like as you correctly pointed out, if the machine doesn't have the horsepower to run the software to begin with, it ain't going to matter how great the connection from my host machine, controlling machine, out to my the machine that's actually running the software. It ain't going to matter because the software is actually lagging there. Here's something else you could do. You could rent and I don't know what your budget is for this, but you could rent a machine from a company called, let me see if I have it here. I do. HostedWinds.com, hostedwinds.com, and I'll have a link for you in the show notes. But basically what they do is they rent Windows machines. And so you could rent them. It's not very expensive. It's $10-15 a month, something like that. And you could rent a more beefy machine and then again use RDP remote into it, that kind of thing. That's one way you could do it. The other thing is, you said you tried VirtualBox. One thing I have had issues with VirtualBox, specifically with Windows 8, and this is no longer an issue with Windows 10, is I've had an issue with some weird performance things with the CPU architecture is weird. There's like different ways you can emulate the CPU, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it is because I just tweak different things until it works. But I've had some success getting VirtualBox to work a little better, specifically with Windows 8 doing that. Any of that helpful to you?
So VirtualBox or VMware Workstation?
VirtualBox. I've not. It's been a long time since I've used VMware Workstation.
Okay. See, the only reason that I really wanted to try VMware Workstation is because I'd read somewhere that they have better native support for the AMD chip virtualization. And that's why I was kind of questioning my whole hardware. The laptop's not too bad. It's got 16 gig of RAM. It's got a nice Evo SSD. The processor, I'd say, is its weak point. But that's why I thought, hey, if I could get VMware Workstation running with that native AMD support, maybe that would get me over the edge. But what you were saying, earlier was, about running essentially an RDP session or VNC. I did not realize that I was actually viewing the VM over an RDP session, and that may be why the graphics just look slightly clunky right off the bat. I've used that stuff at work, RDP and things, and it's not like you're sitting there on bare metal, as you say. You can notice a little bit of kind of down-tuned sort of performance and response. So So I use VMware at work for a Windows host and a Windows guest, and the Windows guest, it looks, dead, the same in every regard, and it's, really fast. So that's kind of what I was getting at. And if you're saying, it's going to look like a remote desktop session anyways, would my intention to run something like SketchUp am I just really barking up the wrong tree anyways to do like a high graphical, kind of a demand?
I would say, I would tell you no. I would honestly, I would honestly tell you no. I have, in fact, so Chris DeLuca, he was a guest with me last week, and he manages a school district in West Virginia, and him and I were doing all sorts of crazy things that we have no business doing, to be honest with you, but and Chris was he has a client that he wants to get some remote video to play. And so he is actually doing like live video stuff over RDP. And granted, it does not work terribly well on a $29 Raspberry Pi, but the protocol is there and supports it. It did work fine when you used a regular RDP client. So yeah, I would go ahead and say yes, you can absolutely do very intensive, even latency specific things without any problems. Now, I will tell you, the chat room has given me a hard time for recommending VirtualBox to you. They're saying stay away from VirtualBox. It's a great way just to get something set up and running, but use KVM with KMU. So I guess and that's how I would do it if I were you, and for a couple of reasons. The one is because just the libvirt is just a great hypervisor, but the second thing is that really appealing to me, and it would be actually really useful if I was doing something like SketchUp, is you can close that RDP connection. Right, and because that server is running in the background, the machine stays up and running. The software stays up and running. So it's out of your workspace, out of your mind. It's occupying some of your resources, but at any point in time, you can dial that RDP session back up, and boom, now you're back in the machine. And I don't know if this will apply to you, but I have done this time and time again, and it's been fantastic. Is oftentimes I will take a machine and I'll move the VMs that I use commonly over to my laptop, and I'll use them there, and then I'll just take that QCOW image and dump it back to my virtual host back in my house. And now I can still access it if I need to grab something off of it, but it's not eating all the resources off my laptop. It's not right there. And you can, very, very easily move those images back and forth from one machine to another. So, if you bought a more powerful desktop or something like that, all you'd have to do with your same, SketchUp setup, all your project files, you have all the settings the way you like them. You just copy that QCOW2 file to your more powerful machine and change the IP address inside of Remina, and now you're back in business.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Well, this is definitely encouraging, Noah. I appreciate that. And the one thing I wrote in my notes here is to try this GPU pass-through. I had misunderstood that as for a desktop system with more than one physical graphics card. So if you're saying I can maybe, see what you can scratch together with that might be something I'll look into next. But as long as you're saying this is all doable.
Yeah, I'd give the
encouragement.
Yeah, I would give libvirt a chance first. The reality is that the GPU pass through. Buckle up for a ride, because it can be a little rough. But I did have it working on my Oryx, so I know it is possible to do it on a laptop. I just it's not the easiest thing in the world. But we definitely thank you for the call. Thanks for being a part of the Ask Noah show, and give me a call back. Let me know how that works, because I'd be really interested. And chat room is also saying that because you have an AMD laptop, you may in fact have 2 GPUs inside of the laptop, so you might be better situated than you think to get this done. But I'll make you a bet. If you're if you're thinking it might work, but as for latency, when you were running in Virt Manager is really designed just to give you BIOS level access to to facilitate making some change, something like that. And so, yep, there we go. And Rakai is saying the same thing. He's saying you need 2 graphics card, but any decently powerful laptop has 2 GPUs. They have the CPU graphics and the dedicated graphics, which is, and I've seen that. And there's actually our producer, Ben, has a tool that he really likes for switching between the native graphics and the NVIDIA. I'll see if I can grab that from throw it in the show notes before we get out of here. But that's a really interesting question. Thanks a lot for writing in and asking that. Phone lines are open, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624, or live at AskNoahShow.com. Appreciate all of you guys who are joining us. So, Yeah, it's funny. I could have done a whole nother episode on libvirt and virtual machines. In fact, I'm living it. I'm working with the client, and we have a virtual host that we have been working on, and went to put that into production. And turns out there's a card, the RAID card in it has a lithium-ion battery that is bloated and has destroyed itself. And when that happens, apparently turns out the computer doesn't boot. And I didn't even know those RAID cards had batteries. I still don't really understand the purpose of said battery. I'm supposed to store some kind of configuration because God knows that, flash storage is so expensive these days that, to store an 8 megabyte file would be, ridiculous. But be that as it may, I could do a whole nother episode. I'm having so much fun. Like I said, I have partner in crime, Chris DeLuca, has helped me kind of work through some of those issues. But yeah, the thing with VirtualBox is we don't give VirtualBox enough love, but VirtualBox is one of those machines or one of those software stacks that is just insanely useful for just, I want to get something going, I want to get something done. And the thing that VirtualBox does that, libvirt doesn't do, unless you pair it with something like RDP, is VirtualBox will give you, a very native feeling performance, full screen with the guest editions. It does things like USB pass-through. It does things like, file sharing and redirection. All that stuff is capable. You can do that right inside of VirtualBox. And to answer the chat room's question, why am I using hardware RAID? Because if you're familiar with the PERC 710 controllers, there is a drive chassis on the front of the server. You put all the servers into the drive chassis, and then you configure the RAID controller to give it some sort of RAID. Now there's no way to bypass that RAID controller. The best that you can do is put them all inside of the you can put them all inside of their own RAID 0, so to speak, and then you could kind of expose the rest. But you're still going through that RAID controller, which stamps out certain things like FreeNAS, because FreeNAS wants to actually be able to talk, directly to the drive. Peter is calling from London. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Noah, what a great pleasure to speak to you. I've been listening to the program since you started it, and JBC a couple of years before then. My question is this. What sort of direction in development does Linux have to go in order to be appealing to those people that use computers at home? So you can just install it, it works straight out of the box, which it does right now. But how do you convince Windows users to switch to Linux and to make it popular enough for them to be able to see the advantages behind using Linux?
Peter, that's a great question. And I think the answer to that is that users don't really care about operating systems. They don't really even care about software. Users care about tasks. They care, this is particularly true with home users. They care about when they sit down at their computer, I want to check my email. I want to watch YouTube. I want to write a document. I want to edit a video. And so what you'll find is, I've yet to been able to actually ever find a way to put this theory to a test, but I would suggest to you, if you took two computers and set them side by side, and you can't use Windows because everyone's very familiar with it. So you find another example, but you put two operating systems side by side, and both can accomplish the same things, albeit completely different ways. The launcher menu is different, and whatever. You're not going to find a user that has a strong preference of one or the other. They're going to find one platform, and then they stick with it. Now, the reason that we see a huge proliferation with Windows, and the reason that we find it's like pulling teeth to ever get them off that, because they're using Windows and they're using it at work, and their friends are using Windows, and so when they have a problem, when they have an issue, there's 5 different people to answer that question. When they need a piece of software, there's 5 different people that have recommendations of that software, right? And so what do we do about that? How do we fix that? Well, my answer is we as the community have something that Microsoft does not, and that is that we care. You and I are genuinely passionate about technology. We're genuinely passionate about owning our hardware and learning how to use it and helping other people approach the same thing. Martin Wimpress, he's on your side of the pond. He has that same kind of passion, and he wrote an entire operating system. Assembled an entire operating system, to tackle that specific need. So when you open Ubuntu Mate, you are greeted with the first-time user dialog welcome screen that walks you through how to get Chrome and Flash and all the programs that, users come to expect to want out of their computer. I mean, honestly, Peter, it is easier to set an Ubuntu Mate machine up when you start with that welcome screen than it is Windows or Mac OS. I honestly believe that. I think I can defend that pretty well as far as users getting software on it. So as far as what direction do we need to take, we need to work on working with software vendors to bring more and more software over to Linux. We need to encourage projects like Electron, and when project leaders decide to port their code over to Electron or to build inside of Electron, we need to not discourage them. I see a lot of, very negative attention inside of the forums and on the internet and in the chat rooms and such on people who build their programs on Electron. The reality is, if we want Linux to succeed, then we need to make it very easy and very approachable to users. And the best way to do that is take software that they already know, software that they're already comfortable with, and make it available on Linux. The best way we do that is things with like Electron, because Electron, they write it once and it works on Mac, it works on PC, it works on Mac, it works on Linux, and it works on Windows. And so it's a really great advancement for everyone. Code developers have just one code base to develop. Users are presented with the exact same software no matter what platform they're using, and that lowers the barrier for places like Linux. Does that help you at all?
Well, yes, it's a very full answer, but you see, I've had some horrendous experiences with Windows. I was using it for a period of about 20 years, and just recently I was forced into a situation where I had to look for an alternative operating system, and the most attractive looking one was Linux. And I think most Windows users need to look at the differences in terms of robustness, reliability, speed, and the great thing about it is that it's only required as a donation. So for most private users, they don't really need to worry about authentication or licenses. So they can obviously see the benefits if they put two machines next to one another and one's running Windows, one's running Linux. They can see the obvious advantages. I can leave this machine that I'm running Ubuntu on up for days and days and days. I have no trouble. Absolutely none whatsoever. There's a bit of a learning curve involved, but I'm prepared to do that and work at the possibility of actually creating a good-looking interface and all that kind of stuff, and totally customizable as well. I recently was forced into having to switch over from Windows to Linux, and it's the best thing I ever did. And for months now, I've been relying on my installation of Ubuntu to use every day. And it's superb. I love it. But there are a great number of things that I still have to learn because I'm a relative newcomer to this. These software designers, for example, they don't explain themselves about the use of their program. Many examples of that. You need much more explanation and a lot more help and intuitive interfaces for those people that are still got to learn things about the newly chosen operating system that they use every day. I don't know how people, well, you answered the question. I know why people stick with Windows, because it's what they trust and what they use every day, and it's what's required. But the problem is that Linux is just such a better operating system. And I think that message has got to come across to those people that use Windows as an alternative. Noah, when are we going to see the day when we see Linux advertised on TV?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, I saw so much to follow up on. To answer your question, when are we going to see Linux advertised on TV? I think you'll see Linux advertised on TV. I think you'll see it advertised on the radio. I think you'll start seeing flyers and stuff like that when a company productizes, it enough to generate some hype behind it, right? And I think the most notable example of that is System 76 with their pop ! _OS. It is a fantastic job on their marketing team with regards to generating a lot of hype, a lot of energy behind their new Pop! OS. And what you've seen is I just saw an article 3 days ago that, local news outlets in Denver are now picking up on this, small startup company in Denver, Colorado that has been selling these Linux laptops and is now making their own operating system. And they featured them. And I think when you generate that kind of hype behind it, I think then you start to get media attention. I think if Google tomorrow started shipping real Linux computers rather than just Chromebooks, I think you would see a lot of media attention. I don't think that a software company just existing and making software, even a big company like Red Hat, a couple $1 billion, I don't think even they, if they made the best operating system in the world, is going to generate a lot of media attention because it's not productized. It's not something that average people can walk into the store, pay some money, and walk out with and use. They have to know how to install it. So when somebody productizes it, bundles the entire thing together, puts it on a store shelf, or does like the Dell model, back in the early days where you just ordered it, very much not unlike what System 76 is doing, I think that's where you're going to see the media attention. And I encourage you, Peter, if you haven't, if you've just joined us in the past couple episodes, go back and listen to episode 1 of the Ask Noah show. In the first 5 to 10 minutes of the show, I opened the very first episode talking about how, I'd worked in IT. I had been in all these circles. I had all these certifications that told me I was supposed to know something about technology. And yet I was sat there reinstalling the operating system on my laptop every 5 months because it crawled down to a halt and I needed to be able to get work done. And when I went on the internet, I found that there's actually not just 1 or 2 people that have figured this out. There's an entire community of people that were also sick of reinstalling their operating system every 3 to 6 months. And so they had built an entire other operating system that you could use. And, it's interesting. You say that you leave your computer running for days at a time. I think I've restarted my ThinkPad 4 or 5 times since April or May when I bought it. And other than that, I never shut the thing off. I close the lid and I open it back up. And it just keeps running, and it's just as fast now as I'm using it right here on the air. It's just as fast now as the day when I installed the operating system, and I have no reason to expect it won't continue to be that quickly until I end up wiping the OS off of it or upgrading the computer. And that kind of dependability, that kind of reliability, obviously I spent 3 episodes railing on the security of Linux. That kind of security, you just can't match it in other operating systems, Mac OS or Windows included.
No, you can't. No, you can't. That's absolutely true. Noah, it's a pleasure speaking to you. I will call back.
You too, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the Ask Noah show. We really appreciate you calling in from all the way from London and then hanging on the phone with us so long too. That that's really something else. I understand that there is it is a toll-free number, 855-45. I can't. We're almost out of time. That's what they call in the radio world a crutch. Anytime I go to check notes or check in on the chat room or see how many callers we have in the queue, I resort to saying the phone number 855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. But you can call in next week. Let's see. We'll close out the program with this. Not as much time as I was going to spend on it, but it's okay. Headline, Wired.com. Google Glass 2.0 is starting a second act. Yes, that's Google Glass on her frames, but she's not using it to check her Facebook, dictate messages, or capture no-hands video while on a roller coaster. Erickson is a 30-year-old factory worker in rural Jackson, Minnesota. For her, glass is not a hip way for apps in front of her eyeballs, but a tool to be used as much as any tool, such as her power wrenches. It walks her through her shifts at Station 50 on the factory floor, where she builds motors for tractors. No one at Ericsson's factory is concerned with the consumer version of glass after initial burst of media glory was condemned for buggies and creepiness, then ushered in the gadget version of Bardo. The original glass designers had starry-eyed vision of the masses blissfully living their lives in tandem with wrapping a frame with a tiny computer screen hovering over their eye. But the dream quickly gave way to the disillusion as early adopters found that it delivered less than it promised, and most users became the target of shunning from outsiders concerned about privacy. Within 3 years, the Alphabet Corporation, the parent company of Google, and its sister company, the Moonshine Factory, where do they come up with these names? The Moonshine Factory? Called X, had given up on glass for good, or so people had assumed. What they didn't know was that the Alphabet was commissioning a small group to develop a version for the workplace. The team lives in Alphabet's X division, where glass was first developed, and a passionate project of Google co-founder Sergey Brin. Now the focus of making practical workplace tool that saves time and money announced today. It's called Google Enterprise Edition. Now here's the thing. Some of you may or may not be aware that I was one of the first people to willingly strap a smartphone to my head, so-called Google Glass. And my experience with Google Glass has been nothing but positive. So positive, in fact, that I now divide my life into 2 phases, before Glass and after Glass. Thanks to a viewer who gave me his head unit, I've actually been able to keep using Glass here locally in Grand Forks, but the issue is, and that's the foiling thing at the end, makes it impossible to travel with. There were some shortcomings, but you had to understand, that was the Explorer Edition. It was a beta product, and they were very clear about that up front. In fact, so clear about it that you actually had to apply for an invite program to try it. So I don't know how people can complain about, well, it delivered less than it promised. It's a trial, people. We're trying something new. Jeez. But I've never been more excited to talk about a piece of technology on the air. I mean, really, because despite what Stephen from Wired is writing, the reality is that there are moments that my kids were doing something ridiculously for 3 seconds, and you simply cannot capture that on a phone out of your pocket. And for anyone that wants to joke about privacy, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that a phone inside of your pocket with the camera sticking up violates your privacy more. Hey, we're out of time, guys. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks to Sarah, Chris, and Ben and Rakai. We'll see you next week. 88.3 LPFM.